You're watching Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-host Emily Campagno. Also joining us today, Rosanna Scotto, Fox 5 New York anchor and host of The Underground Economy on Fox Nation. Lisa Booth, Fox News political analyst, and Larry Kudlow, host of Kudlow on Fox Business. Emily, I come to you. We were sharing some moments during that and kind of tearing up. It's always important to do this, but as we look at what's happening clear across the world right now, it's especially important.
Especially important. And may I just briefly touch on exactly each of these Medal of Honor recipients, because significant to today is that each of those three soldiers fought in a different era, and two of whom were awarded this posthumously, as we saw some of their family members there, and we were getting emotional and witnessing. It was such a privilege to witness how sacred those moments were. Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds, who passed away in 1985, he shielded Jewish POWs from Nazi guards in 1944. Refusing to separate the Jewish soldiers from the American ones, defying the Nazi guard orders and saying, "We are all Jews," which I think as well translates to these events that are happening right outside of our windows and across the world in the region. And then Staff Sergeant Terry Richardson, who is retired, holds the rank command of Sergeant Major. We saw him there receiving the Medal of Honor from President Trump, saved 85 fellow soldiers in Vietnam. That's generations, that's untold generations that are alive because of him. And then posthumously, Staff Sergeant Michael Ollis from right here in Staten Island, who shielded fellow soldiers from a suicide bomber, including the wounded Polish Lieutenant Karol Sierpika, who we saw then give remarks. And he said, "I am committed, a lifelong committed," the Polish soldier said, "to honoring the courage of your son," speaking directly to the parents. And then we saw him embracing the father of the late Sergeant Michael Ollis. Just an incredible ceremony that all Americans share in. And I think most telling, final point, is that the president said, "What a great honor to be here." He too is humbled by the courage and bravery of these men.
You know, Larry, as we started to watch that, right on the heels of the president's sort of update and comments about Operation Epic Fury at the very beginning of this, I couldn't miss the timing. And President Trump knows about timing. You've worked with him. Your thoughts?
Yes, he does. I just want to echo Emily's points. What Mr. Trump has done is brought back patriotism and the honor of the military, and the honor of serving in the military, and the honor of praising and praying for those posthumous awards. This is so wonderful, and it's very authentic. So yeah, he knows what he's doing in a timing sense, but he's been doing this kind of thing for the better part of the last year. So I think the timing is interesting, but not crucial. Look, to me, what he's doing as a commander-in-chief in Iran is he is changing history. He is changing. This is the Berlin Wall coming down and freeing up Europe from Soviet communism. This is the Iranian regime change, the end of the mullahs, and I don't know how this thing's going to end up, so I don't want to get ahead of that curve. But he is giving the end of this Iranian terrorism. He is putting freedom in the Middle East, freedom for Iranians, hopefully, freedom from Israel so they can live peaceably, Western Europe, the United States. I mean, the Iranians tried to kill Trump several times, as I'm sure you all know. This is a freedom effort, and I think it's going to pay off. I think what he's done is epic. I'd use that word. I know his epic fury is how it was. I use the word.
I think he would use that word too.
I know. I use the word epic for the State of the Union message, and little did I know, a few days later this would happen. But I mean, it's almost though no one would do this except Trump. He is, I guess, Harris. I think he's perhaps the most consequential president we have ever had. And if I'm wrong about that, I will throw Reagan in for overturning communism. And I might throw FDR in, believe it or not, because of the conduct of the war, which was so important. But this is remarkable stuff, Yeah. And, you know, he will do whatever it takes to meet this commitment to overturn the murderers and terrorists in Iran. That's what I think.
You know, Lisa, from what Larry was just talking about, it would take all of the partners that we have, and remember that big trip that the president made in the last year going to the Middle East. It would take all those partners to recognize, even if they didn't want to jump in militarily, how important and critical this moment was, and at least to stand down and not come against us. Iran has made sure that that's going to happen because they're hitting those neutral people, and they're hitting. Who hits the Burj? Who hits the world's only 7-star hotel with tourists from all over the globe there? Like, who hits that? But 9 people have been killed, they verified today. And I don't know, I'm going to ask our team in the control room, do we have that Prime Minister Netanyahu visiting that synagogue a short time ago? We had just gotten the video in. More than 40 injured in that. A missile hit and destroyed a synagogue in Beit Shemesh in Israel. Here it is. He spoke briefly while there. There was a public bomb shelter beneath that synagogue, and people died, people injured. Look at, there's almost nothing left. And what Benjamin Netanyahu was talking about was just the fact that he wants people to know the difference between the enemy and Iran, and as they press this offensive forward, to force regime change if they can, but certainly ultimately to free the Iranian people, something Larry was saying.
Yeah.
And one more just to get this out. Most of the Israeli population is in bomb shelters and has been for 60 hours. That from Trey Ying's reporting. Look, a lot of people are watching this, holding their breath around the Middle East, and having us in Israel and others now engage is important, it's critical, and it could change the landscape of that part of the world.
Yeah, and we've heard people ask, you know, why is the United States involved in this war? But hasn't Iran demonstrated the why with its reckless attacks on civilian infrastructure, as you pointed out, even if it's in the Gulf, and even including on these Gulf states and its Middle Eastern neighbors? And Harris, you bring up the point that Iran has alienated, you know, these Gulf states, but President Trump has also brought them into the fold. And you look at even during his first administration with the Abraham Accords, and then also during the second administration, you referenced the speech in Saudi Arabia last year. And what did President Trump say? He said the future of the Middle East is commerce, not chaos. He has handled these Middle Eastern countries differently than past presidents. He even went in and said, look, I'm not a nation builder. I'm not trying to interfere with your business. He recognizes that these Gulf states, they're monarchies. Right? They're not going to see the world the same way that we see the world, and from a democratic standpoint. And, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth reiterated that today in telling people, look, this is not going to be another Iraq. We're not interested in nation building. So that's not what we're going to see here. So I think what President Trump has done through that commerce, not chaos, is built these relationships with these Gulf nations, which are clearly, paying dividends right now.
No forever war. There's no forever war, which is what Democrats are trying to pull. No forever war. He's made that very clear. And the regime change could be a regime alteration or regime change. We don't know how that's going to play out.
Well, it's going to be an alteration. Most of them are dead.
Well, it's going to be. We don't know even if the government can survive with their successors. But can I make one more point? Not only all the Gulf states supporting it, the big European countries finally coming around, but not a peep, almost not a peep from China or Russia. Yeah. Almost virtually silence from them. And you know what? Russia's going to think twice about Ukraine. China's going to think twice about Taiwan. This is a huge change in world geopolitics, wow. An enormous change in world geopolitics.
Well, also,
go ahead.
I was just going to point out, too, our men and women in uniform trust President Trump. We saw him honor these 3 Army individuals today. But beyond that, recruitment has been up under President Trump. They trust his vision for the future. They trust that he's going to be judicious with their lives, that he values their lives. And we saw that honor play out before we started here.
And I was going to say the president and even Secretary Hegseth from early this morning at 8 o'clock this morning, they're trying to prove that they tried to push for peace. It stalled so many times. The president said several times they went back to Tehran. They wanted peace before they took this action, but they felt Tehran was not going to do it. They had to pull the trigger. And they said basically the regime's ballistic missile program was growing rapidly and dramatically. It posed a clear, colossal threat to America and our forces stationed overseas. Still justifying why they had to do it.
And we still don't know.
Real quickly, there is a joint statement signed by Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Jordan, and the USA, saying that they strongly condemn the Islamic Republic of Iran's indiscriminate and reckless attacks with missiles and drones against sovereign territories across the region. That is a deal breaker.
And we don't know where the enriched uranium is. 60% enrichment. We don't know where that is, but we do know that Iran was hustling to protect various sites around their country, pouring cement on and whatnot. But that's key. 60%, that's the makings of a nuclear bomb.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.